I forced myself to play through Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and it actually surprised me. I can't be the only one who constantly forgot that this game was releasing. And maybe that's because of my somewhat complicated history with the franchise. Or maybe I'm just forgetful. I forget a lot of things. But I would say the last time I tried to play one of these Hyrule Warriors games, I was probably just a little bit too impatient and maybe even silly. In this video, I'll be talking about this game in these separate categories. And by the end, we'll rank them on the game gauge. We love the game gauge! You guys love it, I love it. The game gauge is love. My history with these Hyrule Warrior games have been all over the place. The Wii U one was actually my brother's and I didn't end up playing it that much, but I remember wanting to. The 3DS one I didn't buy until just recently, which makes sense. Have you seen how it performs? And the Definitive Edition game was actually one of the first games I bought on the Nintendo Switch myself, full price. I bought it day one because I really wanted to try and get into it. And then I played it for about like 5 hours and then I just got bored. And then same thing happened with Age of Calamity. Again, I don't really know why. I just lost interest in it after a short amount of time, and also I found out that it wasn't technically canon and that didn't really help. But I don't know, I just haven't played through any of these Hyrule Warriors games. I've always liked what Hyrule Warriors was going for. I love that hack and slash chaos where you obliterate enemies left and right. Like me with a Popeye's 5-piece tender meal with ranch and barbecue sauce. Oh my goodness. To be fair though, Hyrule Warriors just isn't for everyone. In fact, most games aren't. And I had to accept that maybe I, Russ Vandy, was simply not a Warriors guy. This game isn't perfect by any means, but they definitely improved it way more than I expected, and it hooked me way more than I expected. First up, the story. This actually made me a lot more invested than I initially had realized it would. This one covers the Imprisoning War and explains how Zelda got transported there. Because remember in Tears of the Kingdom when she vanishes at the very beginning? Which by the way isn't a spoiler, it happened in like the first hour of the game, so chill. Anyway, she disappears in Tears of the Kingdom, and this is where she goes. Back in time to when Hyrule was first founded, when she meets the King and Queen, Mr. and Mrs. Goat. That's the whole idea of the game. I won't spoil anything, but let me just say the story is one of the best in Nintendo history. It's told really well, and the addition of full voice acting and fully animated cutscenes gives it so much more personality and care that a lot of other games just don't get. Like a certain other game that came out on the Nintendo Switch that's made by a billion-dollar company, which has little creatures in it and rhymes with Pokemon. Yes, Age of Imprisonment actually has the quality and heart that past Hyrule Warriors games didn't quite reach for me. Maybe I'm just more invested now because, well, this was my job, so I don't know, go buy a Switch 2. My only real complaint about the story isn't even about the plot, it's more the characters, because this is said so far in the past, there really aren't that many familiar faces they could pull from. You've got Zelda, obviously, and then Rauru and Sonya, the goats, who return from Tears of the Kingdom, and actually get a lot more personality here because the story involves them so heavily. But everyone else is just pretty basic. There are new characters from recognizable tribes like the Gorons, and there are a couple of new main playable characters, but they're not exactly memorable. Then there's this Korok guy who sounds like a complete cartoon character. Larry the Cucumber, anyone? He can get a little irritating, though he may or may not grow on you as the game goes on. He grew on me. Oh, and then there's this Zonai you can play as that definitely isn't supposed to be replacing Link. Right, guys? Right? The characters could have been stronger, sure, but honestly, I don't know how else they could have handled it. For what it is, it works. You got some memorable guys out there. I think there's a possibility that the lack of memorable or recognizable characters, such as, Link, could potentially hurt the sales long term, because Link is just so darn advertisable, but I guess we'll have to see. The gameplay. At first glance, it probably looks like a bunch of random things and enemies flying around, and to that, I'd say, yeah, that's about it. That's basically this entire game. You're literally just running around, obliterating enemies over and over again, mowing down waves of creatures non-stop. I thought it would end up feeling repetitive like the older games, but I don't know what it is. And this one, it just feels good. I literally played for hours and hours and wanted to keep going. Sure, I can see where it might eventually get repetitive, but it hasn't hit me yet like the other ones did. I have a theory about why, but I'll tell you about that a little bit later. Most levels require you to hit checkpoints on the mini-map, fight off hundreds of enemies, and usually take down one big guy before moving on to the next area. You do this not only to progress, but to level up your character, which lets you expand their movesets via the map, upgrade your gear from items you collect in missions, set up camps, and boost your mobility with the other stuff you loot while smashing through enemies. And like I said, the combat is ridiculously addicting. I am genuinely impressed by how many combos and animations each character has, and how seamless and satisfying they all feel. You're mostly mashing Y and X in different combos to unleash your epic moves. But on top of that, you got all these Zonai items you can equip for extra flair, like the fire emitter. Ooh. Some gadgets freeze enemies, others shoot cannons. There's a ton of variety, and when a boss charges or jumps at you, you can counterattack it, and oh my goodness, it's so good. Call it Rauru, because it's goated. I actually found it fun to play through a level, upgrade my gear, level up my character, and even tackle side quests. And if you know me at all, I usually don't do that many side quests for some reason. I just go through the main story. I'm focused on the main story, and then if I really like the game, I'll do side quests. I did side quests in this game. At night, I just tried to pick through and upgrade my character as best as I can before I moved on to the story. It's actually insane how much I played this game, more than I expected. Oh, and speaking of side quests, I've got a ton of videos on my second channel covering all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of crazy deep takes, so please check it out after this. I would muchly appreciate it. Go subscribe and like over there. And you can also subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed. All right, let's keep going. The gameplay also gets very diverse depending on which character you play, and there are segments that totally shake things up, like this on-rails shooter section. It's super different, but really fun. It's almost too different. I can see some people thinking it doesn't belong here, but I enjoyed it for what it is. But I think what really made this game stand out compared to all the others are the absolutely fantastic visuals. Like, this really feels like a next-gen Nintendo game. This is why we bought a Switch 2. And okay, I hate to compare it to Pokemon Legends EA, especially since that's technically not a Switch 2 game. It's a Switch 1 game. But look at the difference. This game was made with care. Graphically, it's stunning. The attacks and visuals are vibrant and flashy. The grass and environments are full and luscious. The shadows and lighting are peak Nintendo, and the overall art style of Hyrule really shines on this console. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both got Nintendo Switch 2 editions that look absolutely fantastic. And now this Hyrule Warriors game, it all pushes the Switch 2's hardware beautifully. And this one goes even further because it was built for the Switch 2 from the ground up. Now, it's not all perfect when it comes to graphics. I'm not the kind of guy who dives into rendering talk and pixel counts. I definitely look at things a little more casually, but apparently this game isn't even running at 1080p docked, which surprised me. I didn't notice it until watching Digital Foundry's video on it. It still looks really sharp, though you can still see the dynamic resolution kick in when things get a little hectic, but it's fine for what it is. If you're curious, it's like 900p, and then in handheld, it goes under 720p, like 680 or 500p or something like that. Go watch their video. They go a lot more in depth into that after this one. But I really didn't notice it. I definitely thought this looked like a sharp 1080 plus P screen, so I didn't mind it. Where the game really shines graphically is actually the performance. And I think that's why it feels so satisfying. It runs at 60 frames per second, unlike previous Hyrule Warriors games. Age of Calamity ran horribly on the Switch 1. Even the Definitive Edition tried for 60 frames per second, but just stuttered everywhere. On the Switch 2, it's finally smoothed out, as I mentioned. Age of Imprisonment does dip occasionally, but it's nothing major to the point where it's unplayable or anything. And it's such a huge improvement, it makes the combat feel buttery smooth and next gen. One thing that's worth mentioning though, which I can't even say is really the game's fault, is the pre-rendered cutscenes. There are so many of them, and they look incredible. They tell the story beautifully, but they're also noticeably compressed. But hey, they had to compress this and splice the frame rate to try and keep the file sizes down. Also, cinematically, 30 frames per second looks better than 60 frames per second, but it's really that compression that makes a difference for me. They had to keep the file sizes down because the game's already over 40 gigabytes, which is massive for a Nintendo title. That's like double Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World. Anyways, that is what it is, but not that big of a deal. But what's really refreshing is that the game is complete. So many recent Nintendo titles just feel unfinished. Take Mario Kart, for example. I feel like there was just so many corners cut for that one, like Pauline only having 2 costumes for some reason, even though we already know that there'd be so many more costumes to pull from. And then all those other characters, like Mario having 8 or 10 or whatever it is. And then there's also the poopy way of character selection where the costumes and the characters are all on the same character selection screen. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. Or they add key features way later than they should have, like the P-switch trackers, which should have come out at launch because it's such a basic mechanic for a collectathon. And Mario Kart World is $10 more than Age of Imprisonment. And of course, the game that rhymes with Kokomon. Hyrule Warriors actually feels done. It's polished, packed with content, and gives you that old school finished game vibe, which is crazy to say. That shouldn't be old school. We still don't have a ton of Switch 2 exclusive yet, but this and the next Kirby game are a great sign of how finished a game should be when they get released. Also, you might be wondering why I forced myself to play this if I ended up liking it so much. Well, going in, I really had to push myself after being burned by the last Hyrule Warriors titles. That felt like a slog to me. And I'm thankful I did, because this time it actually paid off. There are also just so many other things that I love about this game, like the music, but what I don't like is that they removed inside box art from the game. The last two Hyrule Warriors games had them. I don't know why the Switch 2 one doesn't. Oh my goodness. That's right. The game gauge score. Let's see what it says. 8.6. That's a good game. Have you played Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment? Or are you planning to? And thank you to these epic, goated members, especially those in the top tier. Look at those green names. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you want to see videos early and your name at the end of the video, click the join button. And YouTube thinks you're going to want to watch one of these videos, so you should probably click it or else. Please like and subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.